So, Kyle, dude, thanks so much for being willing to chat with me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. So I've been really looking forward to talking to you because you kind of have an untraditional way of being an indie game developer, and you've definitely taken a big risk, sort of taking the leap of faith and going full time indie. Um, but yeah, why don't you introduce yourself before I start rambling about how I'm impressed with what you've done? So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Banks. I'm the developer of a game called Farewell North. It's an emotional, atmospheric, moody game where you play as a border collie and you're restoring color to your human's world. It's set in the Scottish Highlands, yeah, it's a very narrative-driven game. And yeah, I almost also make devlogs and kind of technical videos on YouTube and TikTok as well.
So how did you get into game dev? I mean, you're full time right now. You're full time indie game developer. How did this all start? And did you go to school for it? You know, have you always been interested in making games? What's your story?
Yeah, I went to school for accounting originally, and I realized about a year and a half in that was not what I wanted to do with my life, so I dropped out. And as I was figuring out what to do, my roommate in college, we were playing World of Warcraft, and he he wrote a script to like automate. He was a programmer, and he wrote a script to like automate playing World of Warcraft, and I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. So I went to school for programming after that. And pretty much like the first day I learned how to write a single line of code, I was like, okay, I'm figuring out how to make games with this.
So you would consider yourself like more development, like your skill set is code?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm a software engineer by trade. That's worked full time for about 12 years as a software engineer at various startups and stuff. And yeah, just kind of did games on the side.
Okay. How old are you? Where do you live?
I am 33 and I live in Scotland, Edinburgh, Scotland specifically.
Okay. So we're about the same age. What's your birthday?
October 1st, 1990.
Okay. All right. Yeah, dude, you were born 2 months after me, so I've got you
wow.
beat. 90s baby.
Yeah.
So do you have nostalgia? This is totally random. Do you do you have nostalgia for 90s games?
Oh yeah, dude, so much. Like I've got a full sleeve of like Nintendo, like Zelda, Skull Kid, Metroid, like all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I love that stuff.
Oh my word! So you're a Majora's Mask guy?
Yeah, I mean I love Ocarina of Time, but Majora's Mask, I don't know, just kind of sat with me.
Well, it's darker, and it's moodier.
Yeah.
And when I look at Farewell North, it's got that Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask vibe. And I think yeah, like have you always wanted to make a 3D game like Farewell North? Or did you dabble in 2D? What was that all about?
Yeah, no, I definitely started with 2D. So I started with like SDF or SDL, FCF. I can't even remember what the name of that engine was. Cocos 2DX, like some early kind of.
I don't even know what that is. I have no idea what you're talking about.
These are like early like iPhone, Android game. You can't even really call them engines. They're like frameworks for making games, mobile games.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started dabbling with like. 2D like iPhone, Android games, but I never really released anything. I actually finished a game, but I just was like not confident enough to release it, which in hindsight I wish I did, just for like the learning experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you? I mean, you could still do that.
I mean, that was like 2014. Like it was written Objective-C. They don't even use that anymore. It'd be a lot of work to.
Well, just put a zip file on Google Drive and you can say, "I released my first game."
Yeah.
Here you go, guys.
Yeah.
If you could figure out how to play it.
Yeah, figure out how to decompile this and run it.
That's right.
But yeah, and then the hard part was, so I had the code side of things down, but the hard part was the artwork. So when I was doing 2D stuff, I was kind of just like downloading sprite sheets and stuff. Like I couldn't really make it myself. And then at some point I started learning like Blender and modeling, and for some reason that clicks. Like I'm much more proficient with 3D than I am with 2D in terms of creating artwork. I don't really know why. It's just something about it kind of works better for my brain, I guess. And yeah, it's just kind of been a long journey going from 2D to 3D, and it's been like 12 years of dabbling and hopefully finally releasing a game for the first time this year.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of game developers, who aren't doing it full time, but they sort of dream about doing it. They're working a desk job they hate, or they're working in retail, or they're working at a restaurant, they're in school. And the dream of doing what you and I do is it's so exciting to be able to just sit, at home in the Scottish Highlands. Like that's insane to me. That's so cool. Or for me, I'm still in my hometown. but I love it. I love being in my cozy office and just making games. It's a very cozy dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got these listeners who it seems so far away. Did you ever feel that way before you went full time? Did you ever feel like this is completely impossible? This is a silly dream?
Oh yeah.
Did you hate your job? Like, what was that like?
I mean, there was days where I hated my job, but generally speaking, I actually kind of loved my career. I worked for some really cool early stage startups. It was really exciting. It was really high anxiety, really stressful, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But there was days, months, and probably even years where I did hate it. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a better job than making games, right? The whole like making a living on it, that's one thing, but the actual act of creating games is like the best thing in the world. Yeah. And yeah, so getting to that point, I definitely didn't think that was actually going to happen. And even when it did happen, it was more of a leap of faith as opposed to like I've made it, like I can actually sustainably do this. I'm not at a point where it's sustainable, so I'm definitely, digging into savings at the moment. Things like YouTube and publishers and stuff are very helpful, but it's not at a point where it's sustainable. So as you said early on, it's definitely a big risk.
Are you getting close to it being sustainable? Have you figured out? Because like, I love to disclose. I love to disclose to people who are interested. Like for me, the way that me and my team pay the bills. This was prior to signing with 3D Realms, so 3D Realms has supported us financially, thank God. But before that, dude, there was like 5-6 ways that I was bringing in income, and part of it was YouTube. Part of it was old games that we had launched, and all of that income stacked up to be more than enough for me. And then I was able to pay a team member and another team member and some contract workers. Are you starting to sort of figure out how to get a drip of income from, let's say, YouTube ads or YouTube sponsorships and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's starting. So yeah, like I said, it's still a ways away from being sustainable, but I've started taking on sponsorships on the YouTube channel, which is a huge help. I cover some of the bills every month. Patreon's been great. And then YouTube ad revenue is not the best thing in the world, but I mean, every little bit helps.
No, it's not. It's really bad.
I feel like people think that
Can you disclose how much you're getting a month?
Oh man, in like a good month, maybe like £200. So like, I guess it's like $300 US or something.
That's great, dude. Like I'm getting like 1,000, and I'm not complaining because $1,000 is a lot of money. Yeah. But for the amount of views I'm pulling and the amount of effort that I put into my channel, it really is kind of like not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So ads are just part of it, But you're also doing sponsorships as well, right?
Yeah, I just started with that, and that's been great. And my kind of like, I probably shouldn't say this, but my like thought process there is just kind of like keep doubling the rate until someone says no, and we'll see how.
No,
that
that's
goes.
Totally fine to say. I think every sponsor knows that that's what we're doing. That's totally fine. Yeah, I took sponsorships too, man. I stopped taking them because I ended up sponsoring myself. And this podcast is going to be sponsored by me. The clips we generate from this podcast are sponsored by me.
Yep.
And I love being honest about this because I want game developers to know, look, guys, if you start a YouTube channel, you can sell your games, obviously, and you can get wish lists, and you can have, a Kickstarter campaign that's helped by your YouTube channel. You can take sponsorships, but you can also create your own products and sponsor yourself. Like if you have an asset pack, or you have a
Totally.
course, or maybe you can do coaching, or publish other games. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's totally fine to sponsor your own content as well.
Totally, yeah, and I mean, like, I think everyone does that to an extent, right? With like asking for wish lists and stuff, you could kind of argue that that's a bit of a sponsorship. I think what you're doing is probably a little bit
100%, 100% it is. Yeah,
I think what you're doing is probably a little bit more like formal or direct, but I mean, I think YouTube's a great way to kind of double dip a little bit, right? Like you can get a little bit of income coming in as you're developing your game, but at the same time, you're also building awareness. You're getting a community, you're getting wish lists, you're getting all these things. So hopefully, when the game comes out, that kind of converts as well. So you can kind of like double dip a little bit as you go, which you don't really get with Twitter or TikTok or anything else. I think TikTok might have a creator fund now, but YouTube's kind of the foremost one there. So yeah, it's a huge help.
Right. I'm looking at your YouTube channel right now. Farewell North. Let's look at your YouTube channel, Kyle Banks. And by the way, everybody who's listening, links in the description to follow Kyle on YouTube. But I'm looking at your views here, okay? And what's really interesting is that subscribers don't really matter. Predictable views do.
Yep.
Like if you got 100,000 views randomly, I don't think that would mean much to a sponsor. But what does matter is predictable views. If you could swing, let's say, 10,000 views per video, a sponsor can justify giving you $500, to $1,000 for an ad read. And I say this because if you were to able to figure out, hey, I can do 2 videos per month, or maybe 4 videos per month. I could swing 4 videos per month. Maybe every Monday you say, I'm going to do a video. And you can predict that it's going to get 10,000 views. Dude, I see no reason why you can't get a full-time income from just doing sponsorships, and you don't have to dip into savings anymore. And I'm just trying to encourage you, because that's what I did when I was starting out as a game developer. When I had burned through game sales, or I had burned through Kickstarter funding or publisher funding, I would just say, you know what, I'm going to commit to 4 videos about games on YouTube, and that's going to sustain me for 6 months. So it's totally possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think it's kind of important to know what your mindset is there, right? Like, so I would consider myself developer first, YouTuber kind of second. And I think if I'm, I've got some crazy deadlines coming up in the next few months in order to get the game out. If I was starting to shift that focus over to YouTube, I might be able to kind of, cover the bills that way, but the game would definitely suffer. And like you said, the predictability I think is really important for sponsors. I'm not there yet. So like, if you look at my last 2 videos, one of them is like 200,000, the last one's 2,000. Like, I followed up my second best video ever with my worst video ever.
That's crazy.
And that happens to me every time. I don't know what it is, but like every time I have a video
I'm looking at the video right now. Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, every time a video that pops off, my follow-up is like worst of all time. I don't know why. I think I get in my head or something. It's happened like 4 times now.
Yeah. Well, it's just practice, man.
Yeah.
And same for me. Like my views, so random. It's so random. The game dev space is interesting on YouTube because
it is. Yeah.
Sometimes it is niche, and so it's hard to get predictability. But yeah, I'm looking at what you've got here. You've got a great channel. So let's sort of shift gears here. I want to figure out, let's talk about like funding from a publisher, and like why you decided to go with a publisher, and are they paying all your bills? Because it sounds like they're not. And obviously you don't have to tell us all the details of the contract, but why did you go with the publisher if they're not going to pay you like a full-time salary?
So I think it's quite interesting, right? Like, publishers are very varied. They all do different things. And so I think it's important to think about what I was doing at the time that I signed with Mooneye. So at the time I was working full time, I was very comfortably, self-funding the project, self-funding, having contractors working for me, still making savings. And so there was no need to kind of de-risk the project by, selling it off and having a recoup and having, high percentage revenue share. But what I did need at the time, I kind of made a decision early on with this game that was very, very expensive in hindsight, which was to have, the game is stylized, but it has like realistic human proportions. And that means that animations and everything like that need to be realistic or they look awful, right? Like, it's really easy to fall into the uncanny valley. And I kind of learned this the hard way, and I realized like I cannot do the animation work. So I need some help there. So Mooneye was really helpful. They're kind of a developer first. So I didn't need money from them, although they do cover a lot of things.
What is their name again? I'm sorry. What's their name?
Mooneye Indies.
Mooneye Indies.
Yep.
So they're a publisher.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mooneye Studios is what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, so Mooneye Studios is like their first party. Like, they're developer first. So they made a game called Lost Ember, and they're working on another game now. And then Mooneye.
Can you explain what developer? I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I know that's annoying, and it's annoying for listeners. We have a little bit of a lag here. I'm sorry. Really quick question. When you say developer first, what do you mean?
So what I mean by that is Mooneye Studios develops games. They're a very small company. There's 5-6 people, and they developed a game called Lost Ember. The game did really well, and they decided while they're developing the next game, they'll also publish a couple games. But they're not. There's pros and cons to that, but they're not a publisher first. And what I mean by that is, like, everyone at the company every day is working on their own game. Publishing is something they kind of do on the side, helping out. But you're not always, and this isn't a bad thing, I knew this going in, but you're not always the first priority because they have their own deadlines and stuff that they're working towards, right? Whereas typically when you think of a when you think of a publisher, you think of someone like Devolver or whatever, where they're not developing games. They might have developers and stuff on staff, but their whole focus is 100% publishing and helping other studios or devs make their games. So that's what I mean by that.
Awesome. Awesome. So they agreed to help develop the game in Unity?
Yeah, so they do quite a few things. So there is a funding component, but it's not because I was working full time at the time and going full time on the game wasn't really my goal.
Yeah.
It's quite small and it wouldn't cover the bills. But the flip side of that is the recoup and the revenue share that they get is also quite small in comparison to what you would normally expect. So it's kind of, I think the way I think of publishers is essentially you're de-risking the project, like you're selling some of the risk. In return, you're getting a little bit more security, but you're giving away some of the upside as well, right?
Yep.
Since I didn't need, because I was working at the time, since I didn't need that, I didn't want to give away 30, 50, 70% of the project. I wanted to give away virtually nothing, or very, very little. And it just kind of worked out perfectly where they were looking for a very small share. They were able to help me out and fill in some of the gaps in my weak points, like animation. So it just kind of ended up being like a really good scenario. But aside from that, I wasn't really looking for a publisher, to be honest. I'd always taken the meeting, and I talked to about a dozen publishers, but either they declined or I declined just because I wasn't really looking for it. But this just kind of was like a perfect kind of win-win scenario. So that's kind of how that came to be.
That's a really smart way to put it. You said selling the risk.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you could clarify what you mean by that. I'm pretty sure I know what you mean, but I'd love some clarity.
Yeah, of course. So, every game has kind of, if you're thinking about it from a marketing or a business point of view, there's some potential upside, but it's projections, right? Like you don't know I'll put numbers on it. Let's say I'm making a game and I think, if it does well, it's going to make somewhere between $75,000 and $150,000, just random numbers. What you can do with a publisher is you can kind of sell some of that potential upside to them. So you get a guaranteed, let's say 50,000 today, and you still get whatever 50% of the upside, but you're kind of like de-risking it, right? So you lock in that 50,000. You don't have to pay that back to them, at least not out of your own pocket.
Right.
And they get some of the upside in return for their taking on that risk. So you're kind of de-risking it for yourself.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. And to provide more clarity there, so that anyone who's listening doesn't know, I've always worked with a publisher. I've never self-published. I'm on my 4th published game. It's my 3rd commercial release because the first game I signed with a publisher was one of those, rotten publishers that those nightmare stories you hear. And so I kind of got that one out of the way when I was 18. I did end up making money from that deal, and at the end of the day, I made some money, got the IP back. I had actually sold the intellectual property as an 18-year-old, which is nuts. Yeah. Don't ever do that. But point being, I've always worked with a publisher, and the last 3 publishers I've worked with have just been so great. Like I just got off a call with 3D Realms, and they're just so kind. It's like we could all get a beer together. Like it's that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Kind of like, the way you and I are hanging out right now. It's just a very calm, casual, friendly conversation. And that's how it's been with my publishers. And de-riskifying is a great way to put it. And in fact, even if you don't even need the money, it's nice to know that if you put a year or 2 years of your life and your time and effort into a game, at least you got paid while you did it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And at least you didn't burn through a bunch of savings and your net worth or whatever, and mortgage your house just because you wanted to make this cool idea, and then you release the game and it flops. De-riskifying is a great way to put it because you're really putting that risk onto a publisher.
Exactly.
And saying, look, if the game flops, you still gave me money, and I came through a lot. I came out alive. I didn't take on a ton of debt, and the publisher will a lot of these publishers are probably going to be fine too, because they're financed by Tencent or some massive corporation or hedge fund or something. So they're probably fine too.
And they have, you kind of hinted on it there too. They're also hedging their bets, right? They're mostly not working with.
Yeah.
They're not putting all their eggs in one basket, funding one developer's game, putting all their money into it. They're, funding a dozen games or whatever it is,
Yeah.
depending on the size of it. So they can kind of afford a few misses, whereas maybe a developer can't.
Yeah. So that's so helpful, and I think that's a really good phrase. De-riskifying. I think that's great. So let's sort of think really quickly here about the risk, though, because you are still taking on risk, and that is that you're funding yourself with your savings primarily. Yeah. And just so there's full clarity here, so that your publisher doesn't get a bad rap. So I'm kind of helping you out here. You're not saying that the publisher was cheap. What you're saying is you didn't want to give away a ton of rev share.
Exactly.
And that's great.
Exactly.
I think that's a brilliant move. You're saying, look, you guys can have a little bit of rev share. You don't have to pay me a lot because I don't need it. So let's talk really quickly about, you using your savings and quitting your job. The question is, the game industry seems pretty volatile. Mm-hmm. It's a little scary right now. We've got AI tech coming in, meaning we're going to have a ton of what I'm calling zombie games, just crappy AI games that are going to look great on the surface, but are crap when you actually play them. What's that game called? The zombie game that came out recently.
What was it?
Oh, man.
I always want to call it Last of Us. The
Daylight or something. I can't remember what it was.
The day before.
Day before. That's a great example of a zombie game. And it's not necessarily because it was AI, but it's because AI games are going to make this problem worse.
Oh, for sure.
And I have a point here. I'm trying to get to the point, which is I feel like the game industry is going to get even more competitive. We're going to have way more indie games made that look amazing on the surface, and they even get a ton of wish lists. They capture the virality, whereas a lot of indies with great games aren't going to be able to capture an audience because all these zombie games come in and they overpromise this amazing look and feel. But at the end of the day, they're just empty, hollow games. Okay.
For sure.
So the AI in the game industry is going to make it way more competitive. Okay. So you've jumped in, you've quit your job. The indie game industry is volatile, and you're using your savings.
Yeah, you're making me.
Do
sweat
you
now.
recommend this?
No, I absolutely do not recommend this. Absolutely not.
Don't do what I do.
No. You've got me sweating here now that I'm thinking about all this. No.
Yeah, that was the whole goal of this podcast, to talk you out of it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, honestly, I think I probably jumped into this at the worst possible time. Not necessarily for me, but just for what's going on in the world. I went full time in August of last year, which isn't that long ago. But since then, generative AI has blown up. The layoffs in the game industry has blown up. You can't go a day without seeing another 1,000 developers laid off. Studios shutting down. So it was kind of a horrible time for this. And I'm sure the people making these really, shitty decisions to lay people off and whatever know a lot more than I do. Mm-hmm. So they know, where the market's going, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, really awful time to jump in and kind of take this risk. But I never thought it was going to be easy. And I never thought it was going to be risk-free. The reason I made the decision was really not like a prudent financial decision. I think it was more just about, I've been working at the time for about 3.5 years. I'd been working on the game just over 3 years, coming up on 4 years now. And working full time and doing this on the side, it was just like, I'm never going to finish this if I don't, get some of that time back. My kind of day job was at a point where it was just kind of made sense to take a switch. I couldn't really imagine starting another job and actually starting on a positive note while also working towards all these deadlines for the game. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give myself about a year, and I'm gonna get this game done. And then we'll see if the game does well and it's enough to fund another job or another game. So be it. Then I get to be a full-time game dev and continue this kind of journey. If it comes out and it flops, then I'll have to just go back to being a software developer. And as I think I said already, I actually quite liked my career, so it's not the worst thing to fall back on. And I'd probably still continue to make games on the side anyways. But it was just kind of I picked my life up. I moved to Scotland to kind of have a big change. I'm not just going to keep doing the same thing and kind of sit in that kind of rut I had been in. I'm just going to take a risk and we'll see what happens. So definitely don't follow my footsteps. It was not a smart decision, at least financially. But I've loved every day of it. So if you're privileged enough to have the savings to fall back on and you can afford to have a miss if it doesn't come out, I think like I said, it's like the best job in the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, I figure this just gives me a better chance to potentially get to do it full time than if I kind of have that cozy job to fall back on all the time.
So, I set up that question and maybe it sounded a little negative. Hearing what you're saying, I don't feel like you're making that risky of a decision. I don't think you're racking up a bunch of debt, right? It's like,
yeah, that would be a whole different thing. If you're mortgaging your house or
right.
you're using credit cards, like
Yeah.
that's crazy. Do
You've
not
got
do
savings. You've got savings. You're, I don't think you have children.
that. No, no kids.
So you're just in this position where you're like, look, it's now or never,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So, dude, I don't think you're taking a risky. It's really not that risky of a decision when you think about it. It's like it's going to be a year of your life, and you're just going to go for it and make it happen. I think it's really cool, And I don't recommend it either. I didn't do that. My way was, I've always been super risk averse. But I was married when I first started my game studio,
Mm-hmm.
and she was in school, and then we got pregnant. So I was like, I couldn't just quit and live on savings.
Right.
And so what I ended up doing was I sold way more of my games rev share to make some money, to a publisher. Whereas you didn't need to do that. You actually probably made a more calculated decision than I did.
Yeah,
So
I always think about
go
like
ahead.
Moon Eye's been great. I have no regrets on that decision. If I was starting a new project today, I always wonder would I want to go off savings or would I want to kind of sell that risk, as we said before. And I don't really know where I land on that.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably go the same route as you, where I'd probably look for a publisher to kind of take some of that risk on, and kind of at least secure, a year or two's like kind of comfortable development, because I think that puts you in a pretty good spot as well. But just the way it kind of worked out with this project, it kind of worked out that my day job was funding it for the first 3 years, and then now the last year is like the risky part.
Yeah. Well, why did you decide to work with a team? You said your publisher decided to help develop the game.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just make it completely solo? Well, first off, could we talk about the solo process? What that looked like before you had them helping with the development? How did it feel? What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, when you're working solo, it's like anything, right? There's pros and cons to both. When you're working solo, it's like you can just put your head down, put some headphones on, kind of focus for however long you want to work and just like bang things out. When you have people you're working with, obviously you want to retain creative freedom and creative control. So that was really important to me. So I didn't sell the IP or anything like that. I kind of have final say on absolutely everything. But whether it's a publisher, I also have a couple contractors working for me on the side as well. They bring a whole lot of ideas that I wouldn't have thought of. Just a different perspective, right? So I was working with an animator for a while, Herman, who he also had like a fantastic eye for kind of cinematography. So we were working on some really kind of tight cut scenes where we had the camera in close and he was doing the animations for it and stuff. But he had a lot of ideas for how to kind of change the cinematography to get a lot more emotion out of it. And those things just I say for free, but he was obviously being paid for the animations, but he just brings this experience and this kind of insight to it that I wouldn't have had, and just makes the project better as a result, right? So with the collaborative process, you almost can't help but, if you're working with good people, improve kind of across the board. But there's also like, you can make a strong business case for it as well, right? So I'm working with someone by the name of John Konsolakis, who's doing all the audio for the game, and it's we haven't even released the game and it's already been award nominated, like the score and the soundtrack. He's done a phenomenal job with it, but I probably could have put together a soundtrack. It probably wouldn't have been very good, but I probably could have done that. But it also probably would have taken me a lot more time, right? So there's kind of a business sense too, where you can kind of pay to get shortcuts and also better quality work, and get the game done faster as well.
Okay. So how long were you working on the game solo before you started getting some help?
Oh, geez. Probably a year and a half, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not quite that long, actually. John,
Man.
my composer John, was the first one to come on. I think it was probably a year and a half in that he came on.
Just because you have a composer join the team doesn't really mean it's not a solo game still. Like a lot of games that are classified as solo games, solo development, they still contract out, music, or they'll go and acquire a license,
Mm-hmm.
From like Pond 5 or something. So I still consider you a solo developer, even with some help with animation and sound, because you're carrying so much weight. And my question for you is, first off, what are you carrying currently when it comes to the game's creation? What are the various talents that you have to cover?
So many things. That sounds egotistical, but there's just so much stuff to do. So all the development, so I write every line of code. There hasn't been a single line of code that wasn't written by me. All the shaders are hand authored by me.
C# and Unity, right?
C# and Unity, yep, and HLSL for the shaders. All the artwork, I mean, there's assets as well, but all the textures and everything are at least at the bare minimum, all the textures are redone. Oh geez, what else? The story, the writing, the directing, the voice acting, directing the composer, directing everyone who's working on it, which I think people kind of underestimate how much work that is as well. Just because you have people working for you doesn't mean that you're going to be as productive as you were before. There is time spent kind of directing these things, preparing, whether it's like, sending videos over to chat over or whatever. There's time spent on that. A lot of the animation, not all of it, but I still do, because it's something I want to get better at, so it's something I do where it seems appropriate for me to do it. And all the level design, all the managing playtesting, all that kind of stuff. So there's a ton of things that you have to do, and you kind of just pick them up as you go when you're making a game. Like direct.
Do you enjoy it?
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah, I get bored like super easily. The only thing I don't get bored of is writing code. Like I absolutely love digging into technical challenges, but other than that, like I get bored pretty easy. So I love being able to kind of shift focus every day. So it's every Saturday my voice actor comes over and we run through a whole bunch of stuff. So there's a lot of writing involved with that, directing, sound editing, all that kind of stuff, and that kind of breaks up my week nicely. YouTube's another one where I can go every few weeks, just kind of focus on the game, and then when things are starting to kind of feel a little bit burnout or feeling a little bit tired, I can shift focus and kind of go on some YouTube stuff for a bit. So yeah, I kind of just like that's probably my favorite part of whether you call it solo or not, game development is just being able to jump around and how all these different disciplines that you're kind of always learning and improving in.
Well, do you consider Farewell North kind of like a personal diary?
Yeah, I think like I said right after the very first time I did any kind of playtesting, it felt like someone was reading my diary. It was very, it's a very personal game. I'm kind of like putting a lot of myself and my heart into this story and the project. So yeah, it's very personal.
Well, the reason I ask is because solo developers I've found, and I made a game. It took 5 years to make my first game, and everything was me. Mm-hmm. Like I put everything into that game, the music, the code, the story, the textures, and the art, and the voice acting. I did some voice acting.
Oh, nice.
Every voice actor I hired, I would even read the lines to them of how I wanted it said. And it felt so personal and it felt so naked.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting here making a game about the Highlands and you're living in Scotland, right?
Yep.
And you've got voice actors, Scottish voice actors coming over to your house voice acting, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's so personal. It's like it is you. It's kind of like this reflection of you. And my question is that exhausting? Is that depressing? Is that anxiety inducing?
It's something. I don't know how to quite, I mean, that's a horrible answer, but it is like, you're putting yourself out there, right? So the game, the release of the game is terrifying. But it's not even just like the financial side of it, of whether this was, a smart decision or whether I have to go back to work or anything. It's not even what people, if they like it or don't like it, it's what they get out of it in a way where it's like, I want to convey a very specific thing. And their reaction to that, I don't even know how to answer this. It's almost like there's no way, this sounds so depressing. There's almost like no way where the game comes out and I'm going to be happy with the result of it, because I think people like it, they might not like it for the reason I wanted them to.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing, but it literally is like having someone read your diary, and there's kind of no way you come out of that feeling positive.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of parenting. It reminds me of marriage. It reminds me of any relationship that is deep.
Mm-hmm.
Because every deep relationship is essentially, my dad used to say this. He used to say, Thomas, having kids is putting your heart on, having children is like putting your heart on a table and asking someone to pound it with a sledgehammer.
That is such a better way of what I just said, but that is a really apt description.
Exactly. And the question is, why do human beings do that? Just avoid it at all cost. And I think, frankly, a lot of people do that. They go into the ground in a pine box and die without ever putting their heart out there and just saying, hey, feel free to jump on my heart and pound it with a sledgehammer. I think, and I really don't think I'm overselling what you're doing or making it more dramatic than it is, because I know exactly what that feels like, of trying to tell a very personal story. And the answer as to why you do it, I'm not even sure you know the answer. Do you know what you're trying to get out of this?
I think what I've learned is that games are the way that I can kind of express myself. So I'm not like a painter, or I'm not good at drawing or anything like that. I can write. That's one kind of creative thing I think I do have a skill in. But for me, art or expressing myself, I just haven't found like a good outlet for that in my life. I have like, we talked about this before the call. I have like social anxiety and stuff, and to me, making a game is kind of the one way I feel like I can kind of put myself out there, for better or worse. But yeah, it's exactly like you said. It's like putting your heart on a table and asking someone to stomp on it or something like that. And all throughout development, I'm always thinking like, my next game, I'm going silly. I'm going like, I'm not making it serious. I'm going like, I'm just going to do like a cartoony, silly, fun thing. Because I think in a way that would be a lot easier mentally to develop.
So I just wanted to shift gears here, and let's kind of I wanted to sort of get you to discuss the process of making this game, like the technical side, and also how you put your schedule together. Because a lot of people listening are probably wondering how they can make a game. A lot of people don't even know how to make a game at all. Yeah. And they really want to get somebody who's doing it to sort of tell them the roadmap, because there's, thousands of tutorials on YouTube about how to do it. What's your process from start to finish with this game? What's it been?
Yeah, so this game started as like a silly little game jam game for a weekend, and it kind of just spiraled out of control from there. But in terms of tools and whatnot, so I'm using Unity. I don't think that necessarily matters. Just pick an engine and get into it, because it's going to take a long time. Like, my opinion is the engine doesn't really matter unless you're making a very specific thing that only a certain engine can do, which is not common. Just pick an engine and start mastering it, because it's going to take some time to be productive in that engine. And I think that's more valuable than chasing, the latest trend or the latest tech. So just pick something and get going. So for me, I use Unity just because, 10 years ago, Unreal, I can't even remember if Unreal was available publicly or if there was a license fee or something. But anyways, it was just the option at the time. And yeah, in terms of like schedule and whatnot, so I'm a morning person. And fortuitously, my wife's a baker, which means she gets up early. So we get up at like 4 a.m. We get up at like 4 a.m. every day. And that gives me tons of time to start working before, the day job started. So by the time I started my day job at like 9 o'clock, it's already, 4 hours of work in. And I find, for me personally, like I'm just not going to get anything done after work. So it's really important to like kind of prioritize that time prior to work. Just make sure I'm getting things done, kind of prioritizing myself over the day job. Now that I'm full-time on the game, I'm still getting up at 4 a.m. every day, and I'm working till like 5 p.m. most days, just because I'm kind of like doing a bit of crunch trying to get this thing done.
Wait, you said you're getting up at 4 a.m.?
Yeah, 4 a.m., yeah.
And you're starting work at 4 a.m.?
Like get up, shower, make a coffee and stuff, but yeah, like 4:30 or so.
Good grief, dude.
Yeah. But like I said, my wife's a baker, so she's getting up at that time anyway, so it just makes sense to both get up, rather than like having offset schedules or anything.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I'm working till like 5 p.m. So it's like 13 hours most days. So that's, been a bit of a grind, but, it is what it is. I'm just trying to like get things done.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of follow. There's a great talk by David Whaley, who I know you've had on this podcast. There's a great
Yeah.
talk by him about no 0% days. It's something I've followed kind of religiously since the start of this
Uh-huh.
project. So it's been about just trying to make sure I'm getting something done every day. It's not necessarily like the most productive day every day. Some days it's like you only have like half an hour or 10 minutes even, but just making sure getting something done. And I find that builds over time, and I find it's also kind of on the days where you're not feeling so motivated, that discipline to just get something done usually becomes kind of contagious, where you get one thing done and then you're like, well, I've got like, maybe I can do another 20 minutes, I'll get one more thing done. And that kind of just like snowballs. So I found that really, really helpful to just make sure I'm constantly pushing forward.
What do you mean specifically by a 0% day?
So 0% day
No
would
0%
mean,
day.
a 0% day would be like you didn't do anything. You didn't, work on the game. You didn't do any marketing. You didn't do anything at all. Maybe just like sat around, played video games, or went out with friends or something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the idea is to just make sure you're getting something done.
Yep.
So on the days where you just absolutely do not feel like doing anything, I like to have like, a bunch of tickets kind of in my backlog, or little tasks in my backlog that are like 5-minute things, like change the color of something. And I'll kind of intentionally leave these things for myself, because I find, like I said, once you cross one thing off, it kind of becomes contagious, and you kind of like build momentum from there. So yeah, I find leaving yourself these kind of like little breadcrumbs basically for the days where you're not really feeling it. As long as you have the discipline to like get in there and do one thing, you can definitely build momentum that way. And over time, that stuff just adds up, right? Like there's a million 5-minute jobs in game development. So yeah, even getting a few of those done is always a big help.
Yeah. Can you break down for me those 5-minute jobs? What I'm looking for here is kind of basically a list of every little thing that people need to learn and to do to make a game. So let's not spend 2 hours on it, but let's try to do our best here. All the things that you need to know and understand to make this game.
I mean, so there's the basic stuff, right? You need to know, you got to know coding, whether that's like actually writing C# or whatever it is, or visual scripting is quite popular now and seems like it's a good option as well. I think you got to know some level of coding. I don't think you can really make a game with absolutely none. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. What else? There's the art side, the tech art side. There's, animation, there's textures, there's UI.
So what tools are you using for those?
Unity, GIMP, Blender, Audacity for audio, Fmod for audio. Kind of just the open source free stuff. And then there's some Unity plugins or assets that I think are pretty invaluable that I would probably bring onto like every project. Things like Nature Renderer or Digger. These are things that just kind of like help kind of extend to Unity's terrain system. And I would find it kind of hard to live without those.
I'm trying to remember if I asked you, are you using assets at all, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I do. So my kind of philosophy there, as long as I can make the art kind of feel cohesive, I don't mind using assets for things that are kind of like not the identity of the game. So like rocks, for example, right? Like no one's going to remember the game because of the rocks. So I'm fine to use assets for those, retexture them, kind of integrate them with my shaders so that they fit cohesively with the rest of the system. But you may as well save the couple days it's going to take to model all those. Make all the LODs, all that kind of stuff. There's no reason to kind of reinvent the wheel there. So So yeah,
there's certain wheels to reinvent.
Exactly.
Which are like, some people would say there's one line of thinking which is the stuff that people won't notice. Those are the things you should use assets for. My way of thinking is actually a little bit different, which is some people are really good at making rocks.
Right.
Sometimes they just look really good. A great example of nature, and I'm sure this game used assets, but it's still a good example of how nature and even just rocks can make a game really pop, and that is Firewatch. So if you play Firewatch, there is such a strong aesthetic in the organic meshes. And so my point is that I'm curious what you think about this. It's really, really important with all of these tools that you're mentioning. It's important to know what you're good at and what you're gifted at and sort of focus on those things. So if you're a really good rock modeler, then make some really cool rocks,
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
do you think about that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think you got to lean into your strengths, right? Because you can't, if you're a solo dev or even a small team, you're going to be doing so many things. You're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
an expert in all of them. Um,
Yep.
so I think yeah, essentially lean on your strengths, right? Like if you're really good at say tech art, like writing shaders and whatnot, grab some rock models from someone who's really good at making rocks. Grab some models from them and then integrate it with your shaders and give them kind of your identity, right? So
Yep.
you can't just like go download everything and slam it into a project and call it a day, right? Like it's going to look terrible, it's going to run
Yeah.
terrible. But lean into your strengths because I think those are the things that people are naturally going to remember your game for. Like if you're really good at, like you said, modeling rocks, then you're going to have amazing rocks, and then the
Yep.
game's going to be memorable for the rocks. But if you're really good at programming, build complex systems and maybe take shortcuts on the rocks
Yeah. I think
to
that's
get things
great.
done.
Well, I just had sort of a maybe an analogy pop in my head about what I think the future of game development is going to look like. Um, I think solo game development is going to become increasingly more easy. The creation side, like the
Mm-hmm.
production side,
Mm-hmm.
making a game completely alone, using assets, leaning into your fortes. I think that that's going to be pretty straightforward for most people in the next year or two with AI and just major updates coming to all of the engines. Um, the issue is that it's going to become incredibly competitive,
Mm-hmm.
and a good example of this is actually um, also your wife is a great example. My wife, she would make scarves. She had an Etsy shop, and this was like 6 7 years ago. And I don't know if your wife works for a bakery or she does baked goods as her own business.
She works for a bakery.
Okay, she works for a bakery. So for if she was selling baked goods, right? She would be competing with top tier bakeries locally and also just huge corporations who package baked goods and sell them across the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same is true with the game industry. Um, my wife made scarves. It's sort of the same thing. She was competing with, like Walmart and Target, right? She has to figure out a way to sell these scarves.
Right.
The same is true with indie game development, making indie games. We're competing with thousands of other games. So yes, it's easier to make games, and you don't necessarily have to learn all of these tools and skills that you're mentioning. Um, the problem is figuring out a way to sell your indie game. Kind of think of it like a farmer's market, where you have a little booth and you have your little indie game that you made, and you have to figure out a way to sell enough copies to go full time and to live on that salary. So it seems really, really scary right now because everyone's going to have their own little booth at the farmer's market trying to sell their little indie game, and they're right next to the Walmart. They're right
Yeah.
next to the Target, right? That's kind of how it feels. The beauty, though, the beauty of the current tech landscape, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. The beauty of the current tech landscape is that social media allows you to bring traffic to your booth from all over the world. So you can nurture and build a massive audience with social media. And who cares if Walmart's right next to you? You're capturing your own audience. You don't have to use the traffic that's going into the Walmart or into the Target. You can capture traffic that's all over the world. It doesn't matter where your booth is and where it's located. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it actually goes a little bit further than that, right? Like we're not just competing against, Activision and Blizzard and all these. Oh, that's the same company, but you know what I mean. All these big AAA
Yeah,
companies.
unfortunately, they're the same company.
Yeah. But we're not just competing against them. We're also competing against YouTube and Netflix and
Yeah.
whatever. All these things. All these things are trying to vie for people's attention, right? And people only have so much kind of disposable time in the day. So you're not just competing against games. You're competing against every form of media. And that also, I would say, includes social media, right? So if someone's scrolling through TikTok or on YouTube or whatever, they're not playing a game. And so I think making content is it's almost doing game development on a smaller scale in a way, because you're constantly kind of like releasing, whether it's videos or TikToks or whatever, and you're trying to, with those tell a story, you're trying to captivate people, you're trying to get their attention, maybe trying to get them to do something like wishlist your game. And so all these things are kind of like, I find them to, kind of be good practice for the idea of releasing a game, right? Where
Yeah.
figuring out what gets people's attention, what gets them to put down Netflix and look at whatever it is that you're making. And so yeah, I think we talked about this earlier, but kind of double dipping on YouTube, it's almost like triple dipping. Like you're kind of practicing this whole idea of like creating something of interest to people. You're potentially making a little ad revenue or sponsorship revenue. You're getting wish lists. You're building a community. You're kind of getting all these different benefits from it. So I think for me, YouTube has been kind of invaluable, and it's also just helped me also kind of like come out of my shell. Like the idea of 4 years ago of starting a YouTube channel was like bonkers. There's no way I would ever do that.
I know.
Like voluntarily put myself out there is a ridiculous concept, but it's actually been a really awesome experience. I would definitely recommend it. But yeah, I think you're spot on, right? Like as these tools become easier to work with, it's just kind of also going to raise the bar, right? So I think last year 14,000 games came out on Steam. The year before was like 12,000. Like it's getting, it's ramping up quite rapidly, and I think the quality bar is just getting higher and higher because people aren't kind of dispersing and finding these rare games that no one's playing. They're kind of all congregating on like the top 1% of games, right?
Yeah.
So the bar just keeps getting higher and higher and higher, and I think that's a good thing. Like it's interesting, but it's also a little bit scary. I think it'd be hard to fool yourself into thinking it's not. But I think it's kind of an interesting opportunity to see what we can kind of do to kind of push the envelope and get people's attention.
Yep. And I've sometimes, very rarely, maybe like 1% of the time, I'll receive like critique saying, why do you do YouTube? Why don't you just make games? You know, why do you do this? Why do you do that? Why you don't make games, you just do YouTube, right? And my response is that it's, yes, if you're a risk taker, just make your game and shut up, and then release it. Don't find a publisher, don't build an audience, don't do anything, and just release your game, and hopefully people will come and buy your game. But I'm not a risk taker. I've never been a risk taker. And I think that might surprise people because I've been, running my own thing for 7 years, and haven't really had a job in 7 years. And I've got a wife and kids and a mortgage, so I have to pay the bills. But the truth is that I have built a framework of security around my craft. And that framework is a variety of streams of income, an audience across multiple platforms, an email list as well, wish lists for my game, multiple publishers. So the point is for those of us who are not risk takers, but we want to get into the game industry, and we know that 2025 is going to be insane with crappy games being released and just vying for everybody's attention. My theory is, yes, it's very, very important. This comes back to the tools we were discussing. It's very, very important that you learn the tools, but I think it's even more important to learn only the tools that you're super gifted at, focus on those skill sets, and force yourself to learn how to market yourself and your game and build an audience, so that when you do launch your game, you have a framework that can at least at minimum provide you a small income when you do launch your game. And hopefully that'll stir up the Steam algorithm and then you'll sell more copies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like my argument, going back to you said like people would say, doing YouTube or selling courses or whatever isn't game dev. My argument to that would be it's kind of one and the same, because you need to kind of give yourself these kind of like legs up to try to get ahead and try to get eyeballs on your project. Like I think it'd be kind of irresponsible to just, bury yourself in your basement for 4 years and come out with a game and expect that people are going to, care, frankly. You have to kind of put yourself out there. And I think you honestly make a better game by doing that. I'm sure you get this as well, but posting on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, you get so much feedback, and obviously you have to filter it and kind of put your game designer lens on that to make sure you're not just kind of like taking in all this feedback and doing everything. But you get so much feedback, the game's going to be better as a result of that. I'm sure there's some people who are like, just absolute incredible game designers who just know exactly what is going to work from the get-go, but I'm not one of those people. For me, like having that community has been a huge help.
Well, yeah, there's design feedback and there's marketing feedback as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm in the I'm the wearing my marketing hat. I've been wearing it for the last year, because we're slowly ramping up to prepare for launch for Twisted Tower, and I've just been wearing my marketing hat. That's what I'm primarily focused on. My team, they're sort of finishing out the polish of the game, and all I'm spending my time on is how do we market this thing,
Yeah.
and how do we consolidate all of these crazy ideas we've had for this game for the last 2 years. How do we consolidate that into one singular marketing vision, meaning the trailer, the thumbnail, the copy for the Steam page.
Mm-hmm.
How do we consolidate all this into a single vision that works and captures people's attention and they get it in 5 seconds? That's important. They've got to get it in 5 seconds. I think you've done a really good job with your marketing for Fair One North, because it's just, what it is, right? It just makes sense. So social media is really beneficial because I can post something that I think really communicates the vision for my game, captures attention, and generates wish lists. However, my following will say, that didn't really, even if they don't even leave a comment, if it doesn't get traction, that's where I go, it looks like this isn't really capturing people's attention.
Yeah,
now, obviously, the Twitter algorithm is different than the Steam algorithm, and it's different than the TikTok and the YouTube algorithm. But if you have multiple social media presences, you could post on all of them and sort of average out the reaction to your content and determine which one's working and which one's not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, marketing's a skill like anything else, right? And it takes practice. And I think people maybe kind of underestimate that. They think, I posted this GIF on Twitter and I'm not getting any wish lists. What do I do? And I think you got to keep at it. You got to try different things. You got to see what works, what doesn't. I think once you post 100 TikToks, you kind of have a pretty good idea of which ones or which style or which visuals or whatever it is going to hook people's attention. And I think that carries over to which screenshots you pick for your Steam page, what GIFs you put in the description, how you open your trailer, like all these things, right? Without that kind of practice of social media, making a trailer or whatever it is, you're just going to be doing it blind, right? You don't have any kind of data or even insight into what is going to get people's attention, what's actually going to be interesting to them. But doing all the social media stuff, creating thumbnails for YouTube videos, like it's a really good way to figure out what actually works and gets people's attention.
Yep. Well, oftentimes I think that a good rule of thumb is to generally make content and to start marketing your game the way that you want to. Like, what are you passionate about with your game? Do that. However, that instinct, I would say only probably like 5% of game developers actually have a good instinct as to how to sell their game. So I think it's good to start with your instinct, but take the feedback and see if you can bring it into your original vision. You don't have to corrupt your original vision. You can just tighten the screws, right? Oftentimes feedback is not there's a lot of purists out there who don't want to change their vision for their game or mechanics or the story or the marketing. They don't want to change any of it because they want to be pure and they see it as a pure art form. I totally get that. It's possible to take feedback and it not corrupt your game. The feedback is really only there to tighten up the screws and help communicate that original vision that you had to begin with. Sometimes you have a vision for your game, yet the marketing that you're putting out, the screenshots, the trailer, it actually doesn't communicate the vision like you think it does. And so you might need to get some feedback to say, hey, I liked your original vision. This trailer does not communicate that. And that's why it's so cool to have an audience follow you and follow the production of the game, because I have so many people who go, man, I really liked what the original vision was for this game, and you may have gone wayward, Thomas. Can you bring it back? Can you pull it back to what it was? Mm-hmm. And so in a weird way, feedback from my audience actually makes me more pure and less corrupted by, all of the feature creep and the fear of launching your game. And that fear can cause you to change things that you really shouldn't have changed,
Yeah, for sure. And I think I don't want to belabor the point, but even if you want to be completely pure, you think marketing is evil and you don't want to do any of that, I think that there's also just a huge benefit, even from a game design point of view, to putting stuff
Yeah.
out there. Like one of the hardest things is to make a tutorial for something. I think people kind of underestimate how difficult it is to actually make something like
Yeah.
without like just putting a big text and controller icon on the screen. Getting, making any kind of mechanic that actually like is intuitive and people pick up and understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's incredibly difficult to do. But when you're putting things out on Twitter or whatever it is, you can kind of see if those things if people are actually understanding what the game is from your 2-second clip. You know what I mean? And I think that can 100% carry over to helping you make better design decisions, so that when you're designing mechanic, there's visual aspects and all these kind of things that help kind of make it intuitive. It's going to improve the game. And then hopefully that also carries over to the marketing side as well.
Yeah.
So I just think that there's tons and tons of benefits to putting yourself out there and getting feedback.
Yep. And that sort of wraps up the this sort of conversation about what it takes to make a game. You mentioned all the technical aspects, but people might have noticed we spent the last 15 minutes discussing marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like that's an adequate amount of time to spend on marketing. Like 50% of your time
I think
should be spent at least thinking about and learning about marketing your game, because everyone listening, please know it's going to become increasingly more difficult to sell your game. And you've got to learn to stand out.
Yep. And it's kind of unfortunate. Like I'm sure all of us would rather be making games than marketing, but it's really those like, those old corny pictures of the iceberg, and it's like, this is the bit you see, this is the whole bit you don't see. Like marketing is a huge part of that iceberg under the surface, right? Like I've spent the last 2 weeks working on a trailer for a big show we got coming up, and people are gonna see a 1.5-minute trailer. They're not gonna see the weeks of work that went into it, the song that we created for it, all these kind of things. But I think it's just a huge part of making a game now, for better or worse. I think you just have to embrace that.
It's a weird thing. One of my favorite aspects of a book is its front cover. I don't know if I'm the average of all of the people listening, but I know for me personally, a book's front cover is very important to me. How a game's introduction, for example, one of my favorite games, BioShock. I love that game because of the first 2 minutes of that game. So my point is that the beautiful front door that you create for your game is really, really important. And what I mean by the front door is the material you use, whether it's the marketing material, the trailer, the cover art, or even just the first 30 seconds of your game, the menu. These are all so important because they introduce the player into this world, and you're basically teaching them the language that you're going to be using for the rest of the game. You'd hate to just throw somebody, well, Dark Souls does this, frankly, but you'd hate to throw somebody into the game and just say, figure out what this game even is.
Yeah.
And so often I play indie games from subscribers or students, and I'm trying to figure out what the aim is, what is the visual aesthetic you're actually going for here? I don't fully understand the gameplay. What's actually the goal here? And so that's why marketing is so important, because it teaches you to communicate what the gameplay, the mechanics, the visuals, the story, it teaches you to communicate that in 5 seconds. And the greatest storytellers, the greatest filmmakers, the greatest brands, they're really good at communicating things instantly in like 3 words or with 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. And I'm not perfect. I'm still figuring that out, but I think it's important to focus on. I really do.
Yeah, and it's difficult to do. It's a lot harder than I think people might realize to kind of condense this whole project down into like a 5-second clip, right? And that needs to set like kind of the tone of the whole thing. It needs to kind of be that front door, like you said, right? It needs to be this whole introduction to an entire world, set the tone, set the stakes, set the kind of atmosphere, all these different things. And that's, it's tricky to do.
Yeah, it really is. Cool, man. Well, that was a really, really valuable conversation for me. I know I learned a lot.
Awesome.
So links are below for those of you listening. Links are below to check out Kyle's game, Farewell North. You want wishlist now? Is that what you're looking for?
Wishlist would be amazing, yeah.
Okay. I asked because I had a conversation yesterday with another developer, and he said it's better to get wishlists on the back end or towards launch than just scattered throughout.
Yeah,
the
yeah. A lot of people are
development
focusing
process.
on like the velocity of wish lists as opposed to the volume
Yep.
of wish lists.
Yep.
Beggars can't be choosers. I'll take them whenever.
All right. Well, that's a great way to end it. Beggars can't be choosers. I love it. Well, thanks, Kyle. That was really fun, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Cheers.
Cool. Cheers.
Get over here. Get down. Hey, thanks for watching. By the way, if you haven't downloaded that free 2D game kit below, click below. It's my treat to you. I used this game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and I actually got to play it with him in front of his audience, which was really cool. This game kit is totally free. It's my treat to you, and you can use it however you want. You can make a commercial game and make $1 million off this game kit. I don't care. Or you could just use it for a hobby project. It's my treat to you. And by the way, if you haven't clicked like, that would mean a ton to me. Hit subscribe. And also, this is important, hit that notification bell. Here's why. If you get notified of when I'm live, you can watch me make my next game, and let me know in the chat what you think about the game or any ideas you have, and you might just show up. Your chat might just show up in the next video that I upload. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye. I love you too.